Thank you, Ceann Comhairle. Taoiseach, after you were elected, you said that your government would act decisively, forcefully and effectively with the banks and anybody else in the interests of those who hold mortgages and are having difficulty repaying them. Now, Taoiseach, last week, for the second time in a month, EIB announced a major increase in their standard variable interest rate mortgage to 4%, affecting 70,000 householders. Now, a mortgage expert has described this increase as absolutely obscene. And the decision, I think, is further evidence that the banks and the government have essentially abandoned mortgage holders, and particularly those on the standard variable rate. Now, Deputy Michael McGrath on our side has estimated and has illustrated that holders with a tracker mortgage at the moment, Taoiseach, on €200,000 will actually pay $224 less a month than those on the standard variable rate, which is actually a differential of $53,700 over a 20-year period. Now, Taoiseach, this will bleed the ordinary householder across the country. But as Constantine Gorby and other economists have said, it will also bleed the economy. It will rob the economy of disposable income and will not facilitate the kind of spending that is required. And this is against the background, Taoiseach, of where the ECB in July reduced its rate. And again, Ireland's pillar banks decided not to pass that decision on, and in fact the EIB had increased it further by 0.5%. So in essence, despite all the loud protestations, despite all of the rhetoric, it's very, very clear that a person on the standard variable rate mortgage is bearing a disproportionate burden here, and has been absolutely screwed by what is going on, and you have remained very, very silent. Now, you did indicate some time ago, the government, that tracker mortgages could be moved to the IRBC, and that this would help the overall restructuring of the Irish banking system, thereby potentially allowing some relief for the variable rate customers. Please. But no such action has taken place. And again, you committed to forcing the banks to cut to forgo a 0.25 basis point rise through savings and administration. You set out the programme for government. You've done absolutely nothing about that. You've been very silent about it, both Labour and Fine Gael. So can I ask you, Taoiseach, what is your strategy? Do you accept that this differential between tracker and standard variable rate customers is absolutely unacceptable, and that is a disproportionate burden on the standard variable rate mortgage holder, and what do you propose to do about it?
Thank you.
Taoiseach. Well, the first thing that the government had to do was to look at the situation that applied in regard to the number of banks that we had, the dysfunctionality of the banks, the whole situation insofar as lending policy and the distress that people felt and found themselves in with regard to mortgages. Government, as you're aware, downsized the number of banks we have to two pillar banks, Bank of Ireland and Allied Irish Bank, both of which are deemed to be banks for the future. Clearly, the government are not in a position here to direct that interest rates should not be passed on. We have made that point to the banks following decreases in the interest rate levels by the European Central Bank on a number of occasions. This is a commercial decision by Allied Irish Bank. Yes, it is difficult and challenging for people who are on variable mortgages, but it is necessary that this bank get back to profitability. If that's not to be the case, then the state would have to continue to recapitalise the banks. Insofar as dealing with mortgage distress and mortgage difficulties is concerned, Deputy Martin is well aware that the banks have attended at a number of meetings of the Economic Management Council to discuss their forbearance strategies in respect of mortgages, negative equity, and those who are in mortgage distress. And government have pointed out the requirements that are needed there to, first of all, respect the code here, that people's houses should not be taken off them, and that solutions should be worked out in each individual case, requiring in some cases from banks personnel to be trained to actually sit down and deal with people who have mortgages, many of which are in arrears or in distress. In addition to that, as you're aware, Deputy Martin, government have set out the position insofar as the personal insolvency bill is concerned, which is proceeding through the House and which we hope will be enacted fully by the end of this year, with an effective date for implementation of that early in the new year. The director for the insolvency for the new agency takes up duty, I think, on the 22nd of October. So it is a case here, Deputy Martin, of government being acutely aware and being interacting on a constant basis with people who have difficulties with mortgages here, and we remind banks constantly of their requirement and their responsibility to deal with mortgage holders in implementing a range of options that are there to be considered. What I intend to do in respect of the Cabinet Committee dealing with mortgage arrears and mortgages is to expand that Cabinet Committee's remit to also deal with banking issues in general, because there are a number of major decisions which are going to have to be faced into in the time ahead.
Thank you.
Taoiseach, the bottom line here is that I listen to your language. You know, government is actively aware. Government is interacting with various bodies. Government is reminding the banks. But government is actually doing nothing in any meaningful way to alleviate the unacceptable, disproportionate and unfair burden on standard variable rate mortgage holders. That is the bottom line, Taoiseach, despite all you said. Now, last November, when banks were not passing on the ECB rate reduction, you hauled in the banks in a great show that you were going to wrap their knuckles and get some action from them. And as people have described it, you talk tough. It's a talk tough, do nothing approach. But even now, you're not even talking tough anymore. And people feel very alienated out there and feel very let down because you made very specific commitments to mortgage holders.
Supplementary question.
That you would intervene effectively on their behalf. And you have not intervened in any shape or form. And we're long beyond the point now. And I'm not the only person saying this. The Central Bank in its report, the IMF in its report, have been highly critical at the lack of progress and the slowness of banks and government to address the issue of mortgage arrears, Taoiseach. Now nearly 70,000 mortgages in arrears of greater than 180 days. About 460,000 people living in families who are now experiencing the mortgage arrears crisis.
Thank you, Deputy.
And the personal insolvency bill will be early 2013, Taoiseach. It's dragging on incredibly long before it's fully implemented and enacted. So this is really standing back from the problem, and you're leaving mortgage holders down, and in the process, not only are they being screwed, but the economy is being screwed as well.
Well, for your information, actively aware means that people walk into my office and every other office of government deputies and ministers and make them fully aware of the difficulties and challenges that they face in respect of their mortgages. That's what it means. Interacting with the banks means that when we do have occasion to have an engagement with them at the Economic Management Council, we talk about mortgages, mortgage arrears, their own forbearance strategies, their own application to the issues about mortgages and mortgage distress. As I said to you, this is a commercial decision by a bank that the government consider to be a pillar bank for the future, along with Bank of Ireland. And if they were to continue charging an unsustainably low rate for variable mortgage rates, the impact, Deputy Martin, would be that you'd have to require 2.1 million taxpayers to subsidise the bank even further in respect of the 70,000 mortgage holders who are experiencing difficulties here. As you're aware, the code in respect of mortgages means that banks and lending institutions have the opportunity to sit down with each of the individuals and families involved where mortgages are taken out and work out a solution in respect of each of these cases. AIB's standard variable rate at 4% is and will remain the lowest in the market. These are decisions that are taken by the board of the bank, which the government expect to be a bank to return to profitability in due course and to be a commercial bank which can do its business as one would expect with members of the public, mortgage holders and business people. So it's not a case of, as you say, it's a case of government being acutely aware of this, but also in respect of the whole series of options that are set out there that banks go in.